This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and it's the Nexus 9 tablet in my hand. You know, Google doesn't come out with tablets or phones that often, just about once a year or so. And last time it was the 7-inch Nexus, which was meant to be kind of nice specs, but still affordable. This one doesn't really push the affordability factor. It starts at $399, call it $400 for the 16 gig. $479 for the 32 gig, and then there's an LTE model that's going to have 32 gigs of storage. That one's going to be $599, so not a cheap tablet, but you get some very nice specs here. An unusual 4:3 aspect ratio display. NVIDIA's new K1 Dual, that's a 64-bit processor, and one of the first to run Android OS 5 Lollipop. And take a look at the back, and there it is. The usual, shall we say, utilitarian kind of Nexus design here. For a high-end product, you know, it's not exactly that exciting looking, but it's not bad. We're going to look at it now. So here it is, the Nexus 9. The Nexus is always an event, of course, because it's Google's just pure, unadulterated Android experience, and often it heralds in a new OS version, as this does, Android 5.0 Lollipop, with its new, what's called material design. It's clean, it's modern, it's definitely a little less, shall we say, robotic. You can swipe to get to your Google now just like that very easily. App drawer, look at that white background now. Nice new reimagined icons. It's attractive, and some of the core applications like Gmail and Calendar have gotten a facelift, but so far the Play Store apps haven't. I'm sure that's going to come eventually, as will third-party apps, perhaps following this design convention. That would be nice, so we don't have a kind of mishmash of UI looks right there. We've got our new buttons at the bottom over here: circle, square, triangle. Think of it as your new geometric operating system. These replace the menu button, the multitasking button, and the back button. They work. There they are. I'm sure most people wouldn't know if they just came to Android for the first time what was square versus what was circle, and well, you know, that you might guess is back. But once you get used to it, it's only 3 little buttons. You got the idea. As you notice, it's sprightly, it's fast, it's pure Android. That's always one of the reasons why. The other thing is that we have the first 64-bit NVIDIA Dual K1 CPU inside. So 64-bit versus 32-bit, you know, Apple products make a big deal of that. And until applications in the operating system are compiled for 64-bit, Lollipop is, for example, you won't see much of a speed difference. Potentially you can in games and in multimedia-heavy applications, and it'll also allow the tablet to address more RAM. Now, this has 2 gigs of RAM inside, so that really doesn't matter much, but it would allow you to go over 4 gigs. Anyway, it's a step toward the future. In the next 2 years, I'm sure we'll see more 64-bit. The Snapdragon 810 will be a 64-bit CPU. You probably won't feel outdated with your 32-bit CPU until 3 years down the road. Who knows? Technology marches so quickly. 8.9-inch display, IPS, nice viewing angles on this. This is made by HTC. They tend to have nice, fairly color-accurate, neutral displays, and fairly nice design language. Now, in the case of this tablet, Google was involved with the design process, and Google has a very, dull sense of design, so there it is. We have metal on the edges over here. It kind of tapers in towards the front just a little bit. On the bottom here, the usual micro USB 2.0 port. Clean design all around. Headphone jack right there. Little antenna line. Stereo boom sound speakers. Now they're just barely a slit on the front. They're not that easy to see, but they are there here and here along the front edge. Now it's always a great thing when the speakers face you instead of facing the floor, the desk, anything but you. So good times there, and we'll check out those speakers too. The volume and power buttons up top here, you know, it's a little hard to see because they are that teeny, and it's black on black here, really midnight blue and black. Very small, not the easiest to actually make use of. What can you do? The NVIDIA Shield, also running on a Tegra K1, but the 32-bit quad-core version, I didn't have the greatest power button either, so what can you do? Anyway, matte, soft-touch, rubbery stuff on the back here, plastic. You can get this in what this is, indigo or Arctic white, or the hard-to-find elusive sand color that seems to be kind of popular. For something that costs as much as the iPad Air, not iPad Air 2, it doesn't really have the same looks. I know that some of you Android fans hate it whenever anything made by Apple comes into question, but let's face it, a lot of people do shop cross-platform with tablets, especially when both of these are 4.3-inch aspect ratio displays. Now, iPads are always 4:3. It's a rare thing in Android. There is some budget, no-name import tablets that you'll see that have 4:3 aspect ratios, but they're typically not something really wonderful if you're looking for something higher end like this. 8 megapixel camera on the back with an LED flash, and it actually doesn't stink. It takes pretty nice pictures. Cool that. On the front here, 1.6 megapixel front-facing camera and Gorilla Glass 3 here. And one nice thing about this, just like some HTC phones, we have tap to wake up. So you don't actually have to hit the fiddly little power button to wake it up. Just double tap on the screen and you can do that. Now there is a little bit of light bleed on this one. You can see there's a bright edge over here. Oh well. Some of you will be driven mad by such things. Others you won't even notice until it's pointed out to you. You know who you are, but beware. It may be something that you'll see on the Nexus 9. Other than that, it is a lovely 4:3 aspect ratio display, 2048 by 1536 pixels, just like the iPad. That's pretty good pixel density. That's pretty good sharpness. It doesn't have the eye-popping colors of, say, something like the Samsung Galaxy Tab S, obviously with its AMOLED kind of display, but it is nice. It is not surreal looking for those of you who like your colors kind of more like natural, real kind of looking instead of better than life. But those of you who are also eyeballing the Samsung tablet might be not quite as impressed with this. It is still a very lovely display, and brightness is pretty good on this. It does have an ambient light sensor, and otherwise you can override that and run at manual brightness. So for those of you who hate heavy overlays, things like Samsung TouchWiz, it adds a whole bunch of applications and just bloat and rewrites the UI in ways that, well, Samsung likes, but you might not. This is just your straight Google experience with the core applications. Of course, the Play Store is here, all of the Google applications. If you manage to snag the new inbox, you can run it on this. Gmail now unified with email. So very different philosophy. For those of you who are open-minded to your tablet experience, either one might do, but I know some of you have a distinct preference for clean versus, well, TouchWiz. The tablet weighs 0.96 pounds. That's the same as the iPad Air 2. And because it's 8.9 inches and not 9.7 inches, your brain says, it looks at something of a certain size, and when it's above or below a certain weight, it says, wow, that's either light or it's not light. This does not feel particularly light, especially if you've just been handling something like the iPad Air 2. Now, if you've been handling some of the other pretty heavy honkers on the market, an older tablet, it will seem light. If you've been using or looking at the Samsung Galaxy Tab S 10.5 or the 8.4, both of those are incredibly light for their size. This might strike you as a little bit on the hefty side, but at a pound, it's not too bad. Honestly, 8.9 inches, just call it 9 inches, is kind of an unusual oddball size, especially at the 4:3 aspect ratio. People tend to either like their more portable tablets like the 7-inch Nexus 7 or the 10-inch class of tablet. And this is somewhere in between, but closer to the 10-inch family, obviously. I mean, we do have the Kindle Fire HDX 8.9, that's the size, but that one's a widescreen display. So this one, when you watch videos, you're going to have the black bars top and bottom, just like you would on an iPad or any other 4:3 aspect ratio display. It is what it is. You know better than anybody else what size tablet you're looking for. If you kind of like the 10-inch class tablet, but it's just a little too big, I guess this would be something that would be good for you. And now to give you an idea of the size difference, this is the 2013 Nexus 7 right here. Considerably more compact, obviously narrower relative to its height because it's got a widescreen aspect ratio. So there's your difference in portability. It's quite significant there. Now another strong competitor would be the NVIDIA Shield tablet, which we have right here, and that's an 8-inch tablet. So here's the Shield tablet, which is an 8-inch tablet. This has a quad-core NVIDIA K1 32-bit CPU versus the dual-core 64-bit CPU in this one. The Shield tablet tends to benchmark a bit higher, particularly in 3D benchmarks. If you're into gaming, really the Shield has such neat game optimizations, things like game streaming and all that, that it's kind of a no-brainer. But if you're looking for more of a general purpose tablet, then the Nexus 9 starts to come into play. But you can see even there, especially, 8 versus 9 inches shouldn't be that big a difference, but it is because the aspect ratio, this becomes so much wider. So again, you're looking at something that's closer to a 10-inch tablet class here. And lastly, here it is with the iPad Air 2. Now this is when it starts to look kind of more in its element in terms of size. It obviously is more looking to be a replacement for your 10-inch class tablet or so, and they both have the same aspect ratio, so they're equally just as wide, so it starts to make more sense. Now, in terms of looks and build materials, Apple always goes for that kind of high-end. We've got the metal back here, excruciatingly skinny design. So it looks a little bit more premium, a little bit more elegant and pretty. But of course you're paying for more than just looks, especially if you prefer Android, then the Nexus 9 would still be your pick. So what else is inside here? We have dual band Wi-Fi, 802.11 AC with MIMO for good reception. In fact, it does have good reception. Bluetooth 4.0. We have NFC as well. Something you don't see in a tablet so often. I don't think you're going to be waving this at your Home Depot to make a electronic payment, but that is up to you. You could, of course, install Google Wallet. Inside, there's a 6,700 milliamp battery, obviously sealed inside. Tablets are pretty rarely open back kind of devices where you can get at the battery. And Google says that's good for up to 9.5 hours on Wi-Fi. And in our tests so far, we've been averaging about 9 hours. Now, this is the NVIDIA in here, and just like the Shield tablet, it takes some time to charge. There's no Qualcomm quick charge going on here, or whatever it is Apple does to make the iPad charge relatively quickly. So when you first plug this in, it's going to say something absurd, probably. Like ours said, it had 60% charge, and it was going to be 6 hours until full. Don't believe it. It's going to update that, and it's going to go down in time. It does not take 6 hours to charge 40% of the battery on this. But overall, if you've got a completely drained 6,700 milliamp battery, which is a pretty big battery, I would expect it to take 4 to 5 hours to charge, say from 10% to 100%. You can top it up, and you don't have to go the whole way at a time, and obviously you can use it plugged in as well, but not a quick charger. It's not quite as slow as some of the Exynos chipset tablets that we reviewed, but not super fast there. Both the front and the rear camera on this have f2.4 lenses. That's pretty darn quick. Again, 8 megapixel in the rear. We're going to take a look at the camera application. The camera has a whole bunch of interesting features on it, and let's look at that now. And there's our bath toy you all know and love by now. Pretty simple camera interface here. Can't complain about it. You can tap to choose your focus point. It is very fast to take pictures, and this is a simple shutter right here. Now if you swipe in from this side, here's your settings. We have a lens blur feature. It makes me go crazy, and it also crashed the tablet a couple of times. There's already been one update to the camera application. Hopefully things will get better. But it doesn't just take one picture of it. It has you focus on your subject first to take a picture, and then move up a couple of feet while still trying to keep your subject centered. Then move off to the side and so on, and it's like, oh my God, forget it. Anyway, other things include panorama, photosphere, video mode, and as it's telling us right here, even more settings. Resolution and quality save location. Let's see what's under advanced there. Manual exposure control. So not a whole lot of things. You can also use third-party camera applications, but the thing is this one actually takes good, quick pictures. And we can shoot our 1080p video with just a tap. Pan around on our nice little bath toy. Not the most exciting video we've ever taken. And if you want to see the pictures that you've just taken or the videos, well, there it is. Swipe into gallery there. The dual microphones on this, they're okay. They're not that great for recording video. They're really meant for something closer, like maybe some nice VoIP calling. No 4K video recording on this, even though it does have the horsepower. Here's some other pictures that we've taken. That's pretty darn nice. I mean, even for today's smartphones. The colors are all accurate there. Maybe a little on the cool side, but it's pleasing enough. Really sharp, but not over sharp. And the trees, the small leaves don't look madly sharp. And here's a picture we took in high contrast setting where a lot of cameras just white out on the cat's white chest there. We actually have a lot of details. We zoom in, you can see the little spots that he's got on his arm there. His tongue is actually hanging out just a little bit. You can see that. It's good. It's good. Detail on the fur. The whiteout is reasonably well controlled. So camera not bad. And the front camera is, 1.6 megapixels. It's fine for video chat, and for you selfie fanatics, it's good enough to take a picture of yourself. It's not going to be an overwhelmingly amazing, gorgeous experience, but it gets the job done. So for those of you who are a little bit more geeky and into Android, you know that with Lollipop 5.0 we have the Art Runtime Dalvik No More. Some applications have not been updated, so if you get this and you're regular everyday consumers, some apps will work, some won't. Hopefully, most of the big name manufacturer apps will get updated. Some little obscure ones are old games, something like that. Maybe, maybe not. For example, Kindle works, Nook will start to work and then just crash every single time on it. Our benchmark applications all work, so does Asphalt 8. Let's take a look at Asphalt 8 and see how it plays on this nice CPU. Game load time's pretty quick on this device, and the speakers are 50% right now, and they're pretty good, but honestly, they really start to come alive above 50%. That's when they start to sound more rich and full. I wouldn't say that they beat the pants off of the HTC One M8 exactly in terms of audio quality, but for front speakers on a tablet, they're not bad at all. And you can see how smooth this is. It's very easy to control the car. Frame rates are excellent. And I bang that guardrail every time. Go for a little nitro boost. It plays beautifully. Of course, there are other measures of a tablet's performance, but given the fact that today's demanding 3D games are really some of the most difficult things that you can make a tablet do, it shows that it can get the job done just fine. Now to take a look at a little of the loveliness of material design right here. This is the updated calendar application, which actually has seasonally themed backgrounds over here. It's quite nice. January is just looking a little chill in there. And we can go to schedule view right there. And we got the calendar on the left. It's actually very nicely done. I look forward to what Google's going to do to the rest of their applications as part of the material design makeover. Gmail gets a little bit of an update too. I have a feeling that Inbox is eventually going to replace it anyway. And one of the most important things about Gmail isn't just the color coding now and the material design look of it, but the fact that it can also handle Exchange accounts, your POP and your IMAP email, though we had some problem actually getting to behave with Exchange. There are, of course, third-party applications for that as well. So how are the synthetic benchmarks on the NVIDIA K1 Dual 64-bit, 2.3 gigahertz clock speed, dual-core processor, that's why it's called the Dual, 2 gigs of RAM, again, to refresh your memory. Well, on Quadrant, it scored 13,728. That's not really a very good showing. Maybe Quadrant needs a little updating to actually deal with this CPU a bit better. Geekbench 3, 1950 for the single core. That's almost double the usual single core speed. So there we're seeing some noticeable improvement, and the benchmark is picking it up. 3318 for the multi-core test, which would of course combine both of those cores. It doesn't always mean a doubling of performance, but still the multi-core number is a little oddly low relative to the single core number, and that multi-core number doesn't outdo the quad cores on the market. As a result, 3D Mark Ice Storm Unlimited 26,307. That's very good. The Shield still beats it. They both have the same 192 core Kepler GPU inside. Sun Spider JavaScript Test 926 using obviously Google Chrome. They really don't seem to optimize and try real hard to speed up the JavaScript results obviously in Chrome with this. On Tutu 56,937. That beats pretty much everything except for the NVIDIA Shield tablet again, so that's a good strong score there. So you're getting some good horsepower inside, and the fluid experience, yes, it helps that we have very clean Android here, but it's also the hardware inside. So is this the tablet for you if you're an Android purist and you particularly like clean Google, getting the latest OS updates first, the possibility of unlocking the bootloader and rooting, putting custom ROMs on and stuff, then sure it is. If you're Joe or Jane average looking for a nice tablet, kind of in the 10-inch family size, and you've got some decent money to spend, this has competition again from the Samsung Tab S tablets with their really lovely displays and their very light designs, and obviously the iPad Air 2 and the iPad mini with the Retina display. And there it gets to be more difficult. It really depends. Do you like Android? Do you like iOS? Do you like really clean Android here? This nice, quick, refreshing kind of experience when you play with it in the store. You probably notice the difference here. Or Samsung TouchWiz, which sometimes can bog things down and make the UI a bit busier. That one's up to you. I will say I think that the price point for a 16 gig tablet being $400 seems a little bit high to me. For that, I expect really frou-frou design maybe, which, you know, this is kind of workman-like design, and some really stunning specs, be it either lots of storage inside or really jumpy AMOLED display that just looks like, wow, super duper. But it's solid, you know, and you get that 64-bit CPU, you get an IPS display and a very unusual aspect ratio. I think those of you who read books, look at web pages, are going to enjoy. For video playback, not so much. You're just going to see black bars on it. But it's an interesting tablet. It's really nice. I think it's priced maybe a bit too high. That's the Nexus 9. It's available now. Again, 8.9-inch display, the first device to ship with Lollipop 5.0 OS. Of course, the Nexus 6 smartphone is going to be coming out very soon, so it'll join it. And eventually, hopefully, well, of course, Nexus devices will get that OS and then some others. Anyway, good performance here, very clean. We love Lollipop. Of course, Lollipop is not a reason to buy this necessarily, unless you have a really old, outdated tablet, you know, that you're not going to be getting any upgrade for, because this upgrade will be coming to other devices and new devices. But still, if you like the 4:3 aspect ratio and the 9-inch size, granted there are not many devices, at least not higher end devices, that have that kind of spec going on. If you're into the 64-bit CPU and it promises for the future, then it's definitely worth a look. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.